Good. Thank you. Seeing a quorum of voting members, I call the December 18th Cincinnati School Board meeting to order. Superintendent, would you please introduce our students virtually that are leading us in the pledge?
Thank you. Absolutely.
Seeing a
Very
quorum of
excited.
voting members, I call the December 18th Cincinnati School Board meeting to order. For all posterity, I'm recorded.
So today we're going to introduce to you students from College Hill Academy, where Brandon Kingman serves as the principal.
Please rise.
Students, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Wonderful job. Treasurer Wagner, would you please call the attendance roll?
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Ms. Crossett?
Here.
Mr. Lindy?
Here.
Ms. Mapp? Dr. Moffitt? Vice President Weinberg? President Bolton?
Present. Vice President Weinberg, yeah, we will be talking about how we can virtually participate, but I'm not altogether sure if today, do we have anybody virtually participating? Has anyone signed up? But not signing up, okay. And I don't know that we have anyone in person today speaking. Oh, great. I don't think so, maybe say it, especially for virtual.
Yes, so I'll say it. Members of the public who are online and wish to speak during our hearing of the public this evening may do so by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will be open for your requests for 5 minutes. If you would like a direct response to your questions, please make sure to share your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, topic, and your contact information.
Thank you. The chair will now entertain a motion and a second to approve the revised December 18th business meeting agenda. Do I have a motion? Thank you. I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Treasurer Wagner, would you please call a voting roll?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who made the motion. Thank you. Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Crossett? Mr. Lindy?
Yep.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg? Yes. President Bolton?
Yes. Thank you all, and the agenda as revised is approved. Treasurer Wagner, would you please present the topic for the first presentation?
I'd be happy to, although the board member who asked for it is not here. Is she coming?
She is. She's here.
Okay, do you want to flip it with somebody else, or?
Why don't we look at the resolution for the evaluation of the superintendent? We'll go to Mr. Lindy, if that's all. He's almost ready.
Ms. Bolton, she was also part of the policy committee making that. But however, what I can do, item 5, resolution amending board policy 3430.02 is straightforward. Happy to get that done.
That's what I'm asking.
I'll buy everybody some time. Afternoon, everybody. So item 5 is a resolution amending board policy 3430.02, leave for employment by a community school. This was something that we had originally thought might be bundled within the consent agenda because it's part of this policy modernization project we've been doing for the last several years, where rather than having 2 separate bodies of policies, one for certificated staff and one for non-certificated staff, we are merging them into one set of policies that apply to all CPS employees. The driver on the need for a policy like this, as I understand it, is Ohio state law. And so we used to have 2 policies that said this, one for one type of staff, one for another. The proposal that is on the agenda today is merging those so that we now have one section for all employees. I do not see Dan, but he will speak from somewhere and tell me if I got that wrong.
In fairness to all the people that are in and out, we've just come from an hour and 15 minutes of the fact finding, so that's part of everyone's confusion and follow-up to those meetings. Could I ask a question, if I might, about this?
Sure, I will do my
policy?
best, but I might ask Mr. Crossett or Ms. Mapp to help me out here if we don't have Mr. Hoying.
That would be great. I'm interested in what's the definition of a community school? Is that the same as a charter school?
I think that's the way Ohio Revised Code refers to charter schools.
Yes, that's correct.
So is it the purpose of this policy that if a CPS, now maybe I'm reading this wrong, CPS employee, teacher or staff member, I guess, since it's everybody, decides that they're taking a leave of absence from Cincinnati Public to work at a charter or community school, that we're giving them that leave of absence at their request
So,
to work in our competition?
so from my understanding, as it was presented at the policy meeting, so yes, employees of the district would be allowed to have a leave of absence, I believe up to 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, to go and work in a community school or a charter school. And when I had a discussion with Dan around it, from my understanding, he shared that it has educational implications. So maybe if it's just starting, they need educators to go and support the development of that school. So they do have the opportunity to work for that school for 3 years. I think there may be language in there that says that that could be extended, but I think it would have to be decided upon. But yes, that is something that the Ohio Revised Code is mandating for us to do.
Okay, so we would be required by law to allow that to happen?
Correct.
I think we have been required by law. It's currently a policy that already exists. There are just two of them, one for certificated, one for non-certificated, and all this is doing is merging that into one.
And I'm clear on that, and I appreciate that. The other thing I would ask, if it's okay with the rest of the board, is there some part of this that also talks about us paying for some part of their employment with the community or charter school?
I don't know if we will be paying for them, or I think you may be right in terms of the benefits.
Yes, I haven't read this in the
Yeah.
last week or so, but it's that we would be paying part of their compensation at a community or charter school through our dollars?
I believe so. I wish Dan was in here to give more interpretation of it, but I do recall reading something that discussed that we would also be responsible to support their benefits.
Does that, do we know? We'll wait for Dan to come back on that. If
Yeah,
it's-
my understanding is that we are doing nothing extra in these policies above and beyond what's required of us by Ohio law.
Great, and if that's the case.
It may be
it's-
that the Ohio law is wacky, but if it's wacky,
Well,
it's...
we know
it's,
that. That's a given.
Yeah.
I think it's just one, if this is the case in Ohio Revised Code, again, it shows the unlevel playing field that the state legislature has put together regarding us, public schools districts, and the public charters. So if the requirement is that we have to do this by law, that's an issue, and I can see why it came out of policy for that reason. And I think merging, the professional and the non-professional, all that stuff, I think that makes sense. But I do think it's important, every opportunity we have, to demonstrate to the public the situation under which we are spending their money, perhaps against our will. Not to mention, in a teacher shortage, why on earth we would be wanting or needing to help have our teachers go someplace else. Dr. Moffitt.
So I really had a couple of questions about it and really wanted some clarification. I'm kind of wanting to table this until Dan can until Mr. Hoyne can offer some clarity, because I'm wondering, is this saying that we're maintaining their employment with us? Well, because if we are liable on page 2 of the policy, it says eligibility for benefits while on leave of absence. And it has a nice lengthy paragraph. I don't know if you can pull that up, Rob, that'd be great. I'm looking at 5B Res amending policy 3430.02 so that people can look at what we're talking about. I'd like a little bit more clarity around if they are maintaining their employment here, so they'll technically have dual employment if they're accruing some sort of STRS benefit. That sounds as if they are having some dual employment, or here it comes, Dan. Dan was
It's the
ready
man
for
of the
you.
hour, Dan.
I text Dan like, we need you in here right
You
now.
know that the moment you step out of the room is the moment that we're gonna.
Text message.
Like, can you come in here? I said, Dan, we need you
Okay,
right now.
that's great.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Moffett.
It's okay, I'm on page 2, and I just wanted a little bit more clarification under eligibility for benefits while on leave of absence.
Yes, this is a board policy that is determined by statute. We're required to have this policy by statute. Sorry, go ahead with your question.
So my question was, it sounds as if we are required to somehow maintain their eligibility for employment with us while they go and work for someplace else, and then they are accruing benefits with regard to STRS, and are there any, and what type of financial ramifications? And if, that's my first question. What type of-
So the language in the policy is verbatim from the language of the statute. There is nothing we're doing here beyond what we are absolutely required to do by statute. What we are required to do essentially is to allow employees the leave up to 3 years to go work for a charter school if they so choose. We are not required to pay for any benefits, but they are allowed to stay on our benefits during that time at fully their cost. They don't accrue, I don't believe they accrue any benefits from us during the time that they're employed by a charter school.
So it says that they're eligible for insurance benefits
Correct.
that are provided to regularly employed staff members and that STRS benefit. It says that they are not permitted to accrue personal leave. Can you explain to?
Provided the employee pays the entire cost associated with such benefits.
Yes.
So that would include not only the sort of premium cost that all our employees pay, but the cost that, essentially the COBRA cost, if that makes sense. So it's okay.
So I'm wondering, can you share, since this has been on the books and it looks like it's Ohio Revised Code 3430, can you share if there have been any costs to the district for people that have done this over the past few years?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of any employee who has, and I'm looking at HR, I'm not aware of any employee who has asked for this sort of leave. Yeah. This is a statute that I assume was passed by the General Assembly at a time when they were trying to get charter schools up and running in the state, and charter school operators said, gosh, we've got property now from the public schools that they've been required to sell to us. We just don't have teachers and staff to work in our buildings. And so the state said, oh, I've got a great idea. We'll allow employees of public schools to go on leave to work at these charter schools. I don't think that played out in terms of we're not losing a lot of employees to this leave provision. However, it is still it's an Ohio Revised Code provision that says every school board shall have this policy.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Very much so.
Sorry
Thank you.
for, yeah.
It's okay.
All right, thanks.
Sorry to have to
No,
send you
don't
that
leave,
text.
don't leave. Any other questions for Dan? We had a good discussion. It's out there. Brandon? Excuse me, Mr. Craig?
I just wanted to note, all of this requires them to then apply to the board to get permission. Like, it's not like, if we had seen this happen before, we would have seen it through some type of board action.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't recall anyone ever doing that in my time on the board. I don't know if it's happened too many times before then, but I just think this is one of those things that's not, the state makes bad laws. It's great. They make bad laws, we have to, add to our rules and regulations, and at times we have to do it almost verbatim. This is just another example of that, and so.
The only thing I'd add also, the only reason it's before you today is, again, we've been combining the classified, so.
Chair,
Yep.
the chair presented that. He
I
got
shared that
right.
part, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? glad to be able to share this, and I think Mr. Craig is right. This would have to be approved, and I would assume maybe that the superintendent and other people in HR have just heard some concerns expressed about this law, not about the policy, but about the law. And I'm sure that that will inform anybody that's interested in applying for such a interesting opportunity to leave us and go to the competition. So are we prepared to
Can I
vote
motion
on
that
that?
it be passed this evening? I'll
Yes,
motion that we adopt it.
absolutely. Is there a second for the resolution for passage?
Sure, second.
Thank you, Mr. Crossett. Any discussion? I think we've had it. Treasurer Wagner.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Crossett?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Ms. Mapp?
Yes.
Dr. Moffett?
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg?
Yes.
President Bolton?
Abstain. If we move on, let's go back to where we were, if we could. Does that work for you, Treasurer Wagner?
Certainly.
Everybody, thanks for making adjustments.
So, what's that? I know. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So we're here to talk about a very exciting topic. Not.
I love it.
So COPS are officially known as Certificates of Participation. Next slide. So this is the definition out of Investopedia. I won't read it because it's very technical and very difficult to understand. But a COPS is a way to finance a project related to new construction or renovation that acts like a lease, but think of it as a second mortgage. So instead of getting a mortgage from the bank, you're selling certificates to investors a bundle at a time, and the bundle is a mix of lengths to attract better interest rates. So the difference between a bond levy and a COPS, you could finance the same project with two different tools. The bond levy creates property taxes where the homeowners pay the tax to use that money to pay the principal and interest on the bond, right? So you get the money to do your construction up front. You have an annual or 30-year revenue stream to pay the principals and interest until the bonds expire. On a COPS, the money doesn't have a revenue source other than your general fund operating budget. So you have to make room for a lease payment. So the property that's being renovated or purchased becomes the leverage for the lease, and people are investing in that, and then you're making annual payments out of your general operation budget. So there's not a new revenue stream to help you make those payments. Okay, next slide. So the key takeaways, I probably already said this, investors have a pro-release of the financing agreement. They're generally used by governmental agencies, including school districts. And how many families? So I think I said everything else here. Some of them are tax exempt, not all of them. Next slide. Also, the issue with COPS is that you have a 3-year window to pay or you get fined by the IRS. So in thinking of our 5-year facility repair plan, we'd have to do 2 separate COPS and size them individually. The benefit of using COPS for education systems is it doesn't become part of your debt ratio calculation. And so it's easier to deal with. So we're going to go through, we have, I think 6, if I remember correctly, 6 different issuances to deal with. So in 2006, we had an issuance of $120 million. The revenue stream is what came from the city-county stadium agreement, where the Cincinnati City and Hamilton County paid us annually. We put that money into a fund, and then we paid the annual payments of this particular issuance. This was in conjunction with the facility master plan that we use this money to create our local share. So we use this money to do Walnut Hills, Western Hills, Withrow, Woodward, and Hughes, and then 26 other buildings for windows and doors, and some elementary schools to help with the local share of the FMP. It's been refunded 3 times. The word refunding is same as refinance in a mortgage world, okay? So I'll go through those in a little bit, but the original balance that's left from that original 2006 issuance is $20 million. So it was 120, now it's 20. We have interest due of 3.8 throughout the life, and it expires in December of 2032. The kicker on these is that once you have a building that's encumbered through a COPS, so it's been leveraged as capital, you can't encumber again, so you can't get a third mortgage on it, okay? Next slide. So then in 2012, we issued a $26 million COPS to coincide with House Bill 264 and building improvements, and we used 28 different facilities. 3 got new roofs, the rest got security systems, HVAC, elevators, and windows back in 2012. The balance on that issuance is $11 million with almost $10 million in interest, and the final payment will be June of 2032. Next slide. In 2018, we did a COPS to purchase the Mercy Building for Gamble Montessori. We also used it to improve cans because we took possession of cans back, and we did some improvements with Carthage and Leap. We are now, it was 22, now it's 16 million with a balance of interest in the schedule of 5 million, and that expires in June of 2038. Next slide. In 2021, we refinanced some old debt, part of the 2014 COPS, which was a refunding of the 2006, of 60. Because you have those bundles, they expire, they have different lengths of time. So at certain points, you can take a portion of a bundle and then refinance. You can't always do the whole thing. So that's why they call it partial refunding. But so we refunded in 21, $62 million. We now owe 58, and it expires in 12/32. This activity, if I remember correctly, saved us about $1.5 million in interest. Moving forward. Next slide. So here's a summary. So the 2006, that the part that was not refunded is, we just paid it off in December, like a couple days ago. So yay. So then in the 2016 portion that we refunded in 2015, there's $20 million. And I'm showing you the source. The annual payment's $2.8 million, but it comes from the county money now. And expires 2032. Then the other portion that was refunded in 2021 was $58 million. That's also funded by the city county money. So we have 2 COPS that are funded by the general fund operating budget, and that represents about $4 million-ish in annual payment. And the 2012 was the House Bill 264, and 2018 was the Mercy Building and plus. So that's the end of what I have to say. So you have any questions?
Oh, yes.
Do board members have any questions regarding COPS and what that may mean? Member Matt?
Yes, thank you. So, one, if I go back, you said the difference between the bond is that's creating property tax for the homeowner. So that's the funding source for a bond. But for the COPS, this is where ultimately we're kind of, we're taking out a second mortgage. So there isn't a funding source for that particularly.
Funding source is your general operating funds.
Oh, okay.
So a bond is funded, the investors are the homeowners. A COPS, the investors are just investors from JP Morgan Chase,
Right,
other banks or
Our good friends.
individuals, yes.
So on this summary that you have up here, I guess, can you break down the difference between the city and county sources that wouldn't be pertaining to the taxpayers, correct? Or
Correct. So when they built the stadiums, this is related to the stadiums. When they built the stadiums, there was a negotiation that they would pay us this money annually in lieu of taxes, and then we chose to use that to help pay for FMP.
Okay, all right. And then for, okay. That's all that I have right now. I'm just looking at the total balance
Okay.
for for all of the payments that are still outstanding.
Thank you, Member Matt. Do other board members have any questions or comments about the certificates? Mr. Craig,
Just
Finance Chair.
Quick note, I would say that just as a point, while it's something we had looked at, and I know we looked at it last year as a method of thinking about our facilities master plan and other things, I think what we kind of determined is the number of facilities that currently are under a COPS agreement also presents some restrictions on what you can do within those buildings. And so it was more feasible to look at some of the other options, like a PI levy, like a bond levy, to do some of the long-term investments that we have to do in our buildings. Because of also the debt payments that you're also required to make, which means you have to clear out funds within your general fund, which we don't exactly have a lot of space in the general fund to be clearing out to cover new debt payments. So it's something that I think we have, and we'll be continuing to talk about it because I think that's something next year we have to do in the early part of the year. But I think we were looking more at the bond levy and the PI levy or another form of payment beyond COPS because of some of the restrictions based on the number of facilities that currently already have COPS and COPS interest on them at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Other questions, comments? I would just ask one, and I may, when I stepped out, may have missed it. In order to fund, what does it cost to fund $1 million or $10 million for COPS?
So the 2018 issuance was 22 million, and we were paying about $2 to $3 million a year. As you pay it off, the schedule changes. I'd have to calculate, but I was thinking like at one time during the budget, we did a calculation. It was like $50 to $60 million, and I estimated a $5 million annual lease payment.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we had
recalling
talked
that.
about 70 as well, somewhere along the line, but so does it work out about that same percentage? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on the market rates, right? And
Right,
the interest rate
right.
and our credit rating. So as long as we keep a good credit rating, we'll get better rates. But I can try to size some for you during the current market and bring it back to you.
But anything we wanted to do with COPS, it would have to be part of our general fund budget, which means we couldn't be doing something else
Exactly.
to
You'd
do
have to,
it, but you spend a certain amount of money to get more money, maybe more quickly or not as part of a giant big bond thing that would have to necessarily pass. But we also have not a limited number of schools where we could use COPS, but there is a specific list that could be used if we could use COPS for that we haven't already used for COPS.
as long as you make room in your budget to pay it, yeah.
That's exactly right.
That's correct.
That's why I prefaced it by saying that first. Member Matt?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, to your point, if we're thinking about the general fund budget, so while there may be some schools that could potentially, we could use COPS for, it will ideally maybe be stretching us, right? Because again, those COPS payments, those are fixed payments that we absolutely, that's a debt that we owe that we would absolutely have to pay. So we would have to consider those other areas to potentially cut and not accrue additional debt is,
That's exactly right.
okay. I'm getting there.
Keep getting there. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thanks for the presentation.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We're going to now go back to Chairman Lindy for Act Two.
Act Two,
which is
lower your
another,
expectations.
policy.
Lower them, lower the expectations. This is great. I'm both a little surprised and delighted to be here to talk about this today. I didn't think we were going to have a chance to do this part of the policy because I didn't think we were going to have another board meeting in December. We had our last policy committee meeting on Friday. And honestly, the number of topics we needed to cover earlier in the year and how much work went into getting the first part of the superintendent eval policy such that it really reflected everybody's feedback took so long. I wasn't sure we were going to get to this part, but we did. And I'm delighted to come back with a recommendation that has the support of all three of our policy committee members, and that is meaningfully different from the first version that was shared with you many months ago. The proposal that is coming from the policy committee is on board docs. It might be helpful, Rob, if we could bring that up for people to see if that's not too tricky. So you'll remember that in the in the policy that we recommended earlier and that passed, I think at our last a board meeting or two ago, there were these different sections. There was a part 1 on the timing, a part 2 on what would be in the evaluation, a part 3 on the scoring for the evaluations. And really in each of those parts, we were trying to provide enough parameters for a process that would have meaning, but also leave enough flexibility to future boards and superintendents to be able to do what made sense in a given year's context. This last part was designed, part 4, with the idea of, well, okay, well, what happens if, for whatever reason, any of the things that are supposed to happen in the annual evaluation process don't happen? So what if there's a year, for example, where, for whatever reason, goals aren't set by the end of that first week in October for the superintendent? Or what if, for whatever reason, the board never comes up with a final evaluation for a superintendent in a given year? I think those situations can be challenging, I think, both for board members and for superintendents and for others in the organization, because there's just an absence of clarity about what is most important and an absence of clarity about how the superintendent is doing. And so I originally wrote this section with this infrequent scenarios title. And then I really want to credit our general counsel, Mr. Hoying, who helped me realize that they're actually less infrequent than I thought that they were. Because this goes back, I think, even before I was on the school board, but there have been many years, as I understand it, this predates me, when these are not for bad reasons, but just because there's transition or because there are big things that happen in the district or in the city, or there's a pandemic, that the goals wind up not getting set, or that a final evaluation winds up not getting completed. And so, hearing that context from Dan just made me feel even more strongly that we should have something in place as a backup plan. But whatever that backup plan is, it shouldn't be a punishment. It should be like a set of default rules that really create an incentive for everybody to work together, come up with good goals, vote on them in public, and follow a good process every year. So I think that's what we're bringing you today. I would just flag under infrequent scenarios, section 1, if the board does not vote by the end of that first week in October to approve a set of goals or performance objectives for the year, what follows here is really different from what we started with. And I just wanted to call that out. I also wanted to credit Karen Imbus for coming up, I think, with the idea that we took from her and the policy committee and wrote it in here. Because I think the original version had said, if the board doesn't pass goals, last year's carryover increased by 10 percentage points. And I think the feedback was that feels punitive and it feels so high that they are out of reach and absent meaning. I think that's good feedback. And so what we changed it to was, like, it's our job as a board to come up with those goals and vote on them in public. But if we don't do that, well, the superintendent then gets to set her own if we haven't done what we need to do as a board. And so there's a time limit on that, and there's a backup to the backup, which we left at the 10%. Again, the whole, Mr. Cross, you spoke to this, I think, more articulately than I'm being at the moment. But I think there was this piece about trying to create incentives for the board to follow the process. Is there anything you want to add that I'm missing?
Yeah, what I talked about also was if there wasn't, one of the defaults is for the superintendent to create their own goals. And that was somewhat in line with the idea that goal setting is collaborative when we do set goals. So if we're not doing anything, the superintendent has the opportunity to collaborate with herself, or themselves, I guess,
Yeah.
something like that.
I have no comment on that whatsoever. Ken or Ms. Mapp, did you have anything you wanted to add from our discussion Friday?
No, I think you both covered it all. And again, just highlighting the piece of it being collaborative and also ensuring that there's accountability for the board to follow that process to establish what those goals are.
I think we also added in section 2 that there's still an opportunity for board members to share feedback directly with the superintendent. There will have been that at the mid-year and will continue to be. I just want to say again how grateful I am for the engagement of Mr. Crossett and Ms. Mapp, and also for Karen and the people who shared ideas on this. I think we're bringing back a better version than we started with, and excited to recommend it for passage today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Members have any questions or comments about the proposed policy? Mr. Craig?
Just a slight grammatical correction.
I meant to say that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
The one under part 4, number 1, the first paragraph where it says, if the superintendent does not, I think maybe you should just read like, the performance objectives set last year shall continue with targets that are increased by 10%.
Yeah, that's just my bad typing. This is nobody's fault but mine. So I think if I will now make a motion to adopt an amended version of this, which if you just look at the sentence, and I guess maybe this is mostly for Dan or for anybody who's tracking with the board up here, but I think it's the sentence that starts with the word if. Is that right, Brandon? It should read, if the superintendent does not set her own goals, comma, last year's performance objectives shall continue with targets that are increased by 10%. The meaning is there if you squint at it, but it's a typo. That's my fault.
Other comments, questions? Dr. Moffett?
I thought I was going to say that one of the same things, but I have another question / suggestion, and I'll address the chair. Was there any particular reason why you all said the first week in October versus the first board meeting in October? And the only reason I'm asking that is because what if the first week is not really a board meeting, but then we don't meet until the second week, but that we had an opportunity? I was wondering, just around timing, if we could just maybe say meeting instead of week.
It's a great idea, and I don't see a problem with it whatsoever. I'm curious if anybody else sees something I'm missing. The idea was to have it after the final data is released from the state from the previous year, which is usually the middle of September, and early enough to give the superintendent as much runway in the current year as possible, which led somewhat arbitrarily to this first week. But I think the first board meeting in October sounds pretty reasonable to me, but I'm also open if I'm missing something.
I just was wondering why you all chose the week, and I thought about it like, well, maybe do we always have a board meeting the first week of the month? We don't, and so then it made me think, for us to remain in compliance, perhaps we should think meeting instead of week. But again, I'm open to whatever. I just didn't want us to find ourselves in an awkward situation.
I think that's fine. Absent any concern, I would probably amend my motion further to do that. But also, like, I think if I hear you, Dr. Moffett, we should also make parts 1 through 3 reflect that, right? So that's because, and so Dan, is that too complicated? So we'll just make the whole thing say first meeting in October.
And then like on number 2, where it says the first week, but if you go down there, the superintendent had like the last meeting in last week in October, or something related to the first and last of October, just make it related to the meetings.
Yeah, so wherever there's that reference to October, it would be first meeting in October.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I have just I think a quick question. It's on the first page, the paragraph that begins in part 2, the full paragraph at a minimum. It says that obviously the overall rating, there'll be 60% of the overall rating, and then it goes on to say that the periodic or interim, I think is what you call them, interim check-ins will account for 10. Does that mean then that this evaluation is really going to be 70% of the performance?
So I would like to ask Mr. Crossett, because the 10% was his idea, and I remember liking it, but I would love to hear the way he thought about the math, if that's all right.
Yeah, I felt that the interim check-ins needed to have a little teeth in them, and that's why I added the 10%, because I think that's really going to be help to be predictive of the final outcome. So we don't have any surprises at the end, that we do something mid-year and those mid-year reviews, if there's a little bit related to that 10%, and we'll take them serious. So,
Well, I don't have a problem with the importance of that because the theme here is collaboration between the board and the superintendent. I just think that the reality is that the evaluation is not 60% any longer, it's 70%. At least 70%. So I think that I'm more comfortable if the document actually said it's worth 70% of, or, it's 60% this and 10% that, but it's not 60%. It's going to be 70%. Or if you're going to want it to be 60%, it should be 50-10.
I don't, if I
mean to
can
belabor that.
push that a little bit, I think that that's one way a future board could decide to use this policy. I also don't know that that's the only way a future board could use the very same policy. So for example, like if we say, I'm making this up, but let's say for next year, there are 5 different performance measures, 3 about student learning, 1 about finances, and 1 about staff culture. And that's going to make up 60% of the overall rating. And then the other 40% is going to come from things like the kind of board surveys we've done in the past or the 360 things that we've talked about. Fine. So then the 10% of the mid-year might be a little bit of each of those things. Like part of what goes into that 10% is how do those 5 goals look? Part of what goes into that 10% is what's the current board survey look like, or what's the current 360 feedback look like? So I think what's nice about this is because the board's going to have to vote in public on how the scoring is going to work every year, each board gets to hammer this out in a little bit more detail. But what I really like about the 10% is that you can't skate by that. Like there's going to be something of a teeth early in the year so that there are no surprises at the end of the year.
But I don't know that the language in that paragraph says that the board could make adjustments based upon that. And this does mean that the evaluation tool is going to be 70%.
I think that
I'm all into the idea of the collaboration. I'm all into the idea that boards have to, each board every year has to have some discretion. But on this, we're basically saying this evaluation is going to be 70%. And I don't see where there's a lot of movement as to what boards could decide to do. Help me out.
I'm just thinking about the evaluation for the superintendent is 100%. Like it's going to be a one pie divided in different pieces. And so what the policy as written says is that a 60%, like almost 2/3 chunk of that pie is going to be based on how did the superintendent do against the goals that the board adopts in collaboration by that first meeting in October. Then it says there's going to be 10% of the 100% that will come from the mid-year. Now, what will that 10% mid-year evaluation discuss? What's for future boards to decide? So it could be a mix of those. So you're gonna say, well, that's still 70% if you add 60 and 10. And I think that's true. I think what that does though is it leaves, there leaves room for future boards to decide on what else matters. I'm also, in the grand scheme of things, not a hill I'm gonna die on. So like if there's an alternative language, Ms. Boldman, you want to suggest? I'm open.
I wouldn't be trying to suggest other language, but I do think that there needs to be room there, and I think there has to be some truth in lending that is 70% is going to be this tool, and I think that's very important, and I think the individual boards need a little bit more room in determining. Mr. Craig?
So I think, at least the way I'm reading this, though, a board could say this would be 80-20, and that would still comply with this policy where 80% was made up of the performance measures and 20% was the, interim check-ins. Or it could be 70-10 or 60-10, and then 30% is decided by other factors in which we would be considering. So, I mean, I don't read that it has to be hard and fast every year be 70. Now, if the point is that we wanted to make the percentage of what the performance objectives is have a lower floor. I think that's a fair assessment, if that's what is kind of being asked. But I mean, I guess for me, the 70% is the floor of what these things would be as part of our evaluation. That's all this is kind of really saying. Not that it has to be 70% every year, because it could be 80, 90, based on how we decide to do this in collaboration with the superintendent.
I'm in agreement with that, but I don't think the language says that it could be that.
I mean, it says, oh, the basis of at least 60% of the
At
overall
least.
rating, and the basis of, interim check-ins shall account for at least 10%. So, I mean,
And at least 60%.
yeah.
So it could be more, it could not be less. So it needs to be established that it can't be less. Basically saying it can't be less.
Yeah, you couldn't have a year where the midpoint counts for less than 10%. And you couldn't have a year where the whole thing, less than 60%, is a reflection of the goals that the board approves at the beginning of the year, as it's currently written.
You can't. Jim?
Another reason why, is my microphone right? Okay. Another reason why I thought the 10% was important was because it's not just an evaluation of the superintendent, but it's an evaluation of the board, because we're going to set these goals collaboratively. And if we get to the end of the year and we have some bad results, I think it's important that the board is checking in. And so it's not going to just be, hey, why did this happen? And the board wasn't minding the store. So that's why I felt it was important to have these interim check-ins and have some teeth in them. It wasn't just for.
Mr. Carlson, I'm not having trouble with the 10%. I'm just having trouble with the 70%. And then the idea that it could be less or it could be more. I mean, it could be more, it can't be less than 70%. And then I hear, boards could decide to do something different, meaning it could be 60 this or 15. I just don't know that the language says that within those numbers, there's that movement. That's all I'm looking for, is that movement for board members. But, I mean, if there's no other, go ahead, sure.
So, yeah, so I can add that our thinking around the at least 60% was to ensure that we were putting a strong emphasis on student outcomes, that was a priority for us. So we did want to call out that was the minimum or the foundation. And so that's why you see that number there. But then the additional 10%, as Board Member Crossett spoke about, is we do want to ensure that there's still that level of collaboration with the superintendent, and also allow for that flexibility for future boards moving forward. So if we specifically said that it would be an evaluation of 70% as being kind of that strong basis for the evaluation, I think that would be limiting for other boards moving forward, but at least saying that this is kind of the basis of where we stand. And if the future boards wanted to increase that they had the opportunity to do that. But again, having that 60% foundation was something that we did find that was really important.
Any others? Vice President?
So just to make sure, you said that future boards could increase it, but they couldn't decrease it. Right. So what if they wanted to decrease it? How could that be an option with the wording? Say it again.
Change board policy.
Yeah. That's true too. But that's true too. But for
We've seen
currently
how
right.
quickly we've done this.
Well, I'm fine with how you stated at least 60% and then the at least 10%. But yes, you could always, of course, go more, but you just couldn't go less.
It might be helpful to remember too, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ms. Weinberg.
It's okay.
Happy to cede the mic back. I think the initial version that I shared with the policy committee had set this. There was no interim percentage at all, and the goals was worth 75%. And so I do think this represents, and this was what the board approved last time, I think a nice I think just incorporation of feedback we heard from various sources. I just would echo what Ms. Mapp said too, that, the majority of the evaluation, at least from my perspective, should reflect measurable results. Because I think that's what the public elects us to do. And I think we're responsible for showing that we're driving meaningful, measurable results. What those results are focused on year over year, every board and every superintendent get to choose together. But I think that was the spirit behind it.
And I do recognize this this represents a compromise from where it was, and because it was 70-something% and what have you, and there wasn't like flexibility, I think, going forward at different board members. Now, I am going to also raise an issue, and I think we're ready to vote on this, but I will raise an issue, even in the first sentence or so of this paragraph, where at a minimum, these objectives will include measurements of system-wide academic and financial performance. That's great. And they will include goals that focus on improving opportunities for African-American students, Latinx students, students of color, and low-income students. When you say that, in my heart, I think that's great, but you've also now told other board members or other boards that that's what they have to be about. And I think, but we would have to change the policy. So I think that's not a remedy, considering how long, because we're going to live with this policy. This policy will go into effect when we pass it. Correct? Go ahead, Mr. Lindy.
I think the policy you're referencing, we already adopted. So it's already gone into effect. It doesn't mean the board couldn't change it. But I would just say that, did you want to speak to this? I don't want to.
You can go first.
Or just, I think this is worth putting on paper. I think it's valuable, and I think it speaks to the values we have as a district. I think you see that in our equity policy. I think you see that in our anti-racism policy. I think we should say that every year we want to set ambitious goals for improving historically marginalized student outcomes. I think we should be proud of this and shout it from the rooftops. It doesn't say what the targets need to be. It doesn't say that there can't be others also. But I think there should be a point of pride. And I think I have no interest in backing down from this one.
I understand that. I understand that. But again, it will include goals that focus on, even if you said at least, but I mean, we've got this policy, but again, there's another example where having a little bit more flexibility with ongoing boards, I think would be helpful there. But I think we're ready for any last comments before we vote?
So I would just briefly add, so I was one of the ones that was really advocating for this language here, mostly because these are, and it's not, let me say this, it is not excluding any of our students, but it is important to call out the students that we serve, and it's important to call out the students that we know our communities are expecting us to prioritize, because we see that within our goals, we see that within our guardrails, and so I think that it was important to make sure that there was alignment there within the language and the policy as well.
Thank you, Member Mapp. Any other, before we, yes, Dr. Moffitt.
So I appreciate the work that you all have done, sincerely, because I think that it's rather difficult getting 7 people to agree. I do not have any problem with listing that, but I do want to offer that it should not be only to that group. I think it can say, and they will not be limited to, or something of that nature, to identify that that is the population that we serve. That is our, with intentionality, we are working to improve results for these marginalized populations, but I think we need to make sure that we're inclusive to show that we're also focused on other demographics as well, because we could have our LGBT plus students say, well, why didn't you list me? And, I think to remedy that, and I appreciate that these are personal values for specific board members. Many of them I share as well, but I also am very cognizant of the fact that we have other demographics that are to them equally important and are not represented here. So what I'd like to offer is more inclusive language to state that it's maybe, and they will include goals that focus on improving opportunities or including opportunities for, you know, I don't know how we need to say it, but I do think that we need, if you're going to be exclusive there, you need to make sure that there is something that's saying that it's not just that, because we do have policies that go to all other demographics that are not listed here as well. So it's not something that I think I want to fight about, so please don't jump on me, but I do want to say that I think it's somewhat exclusive.
Mr.
You know,
Lindy.
I agree with so many of the things that you have shared, genuinely. And I think this is a great example of like trying to strike this balance between clarity on process and values while also leaving future boards flexibility. My hope is that the like at a minimum language in that paragraph leaves some room for some of that. It might not, and I think it might be that there are future policy committees that want to take another look at this. I think what I was going to offer as a way to move forward, though, certainly open to feedback, was that the motion that I was making was really limited to Part 4, which is the last thing we had a chance to discuss in the policy committee. And that I was motioning that we adopt Part 4, would see if somebody seconds this and if we have votes for it, and that the only changes would be the typo that I was sharing in that paragraph. And I think Dr. Moffitt's good idea to switch first week in October to first meeting in October. And then we have a new year, we will have a new policy committee. If there are new folks who want to take a look at other changes to this, I think that's how a process should work. But my motion was going to be around Part 4, the typo fix, and then the switch to first meeting in October.
I appreciate that. Does that satisfy members of the board to make the motion be about Part 4, which is the new part? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Mapp. Vote, please.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Crossett?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Ms. Mapp?
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg?
Yes.
President Bolton?
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. And now we'll go to our other presentations, I think. We'll start with the superintendents. 3, I think you have.
I have two retirees this year. Is that what I'm sharing now?
Oh, excellent. Announcements today. Great.
2 retirees, both civil service employees. The first retiree we have is a paraprofessional from Pleasant Hill Academy, Miss Alicia Ringer.
Okay.
And the second person, a senior accounting tech out of our Human Resources Talent Department, Nancy Thompson Glazer. Congratulations to both of those ladies.
Thank you. Board members have any announcements or?
I just have a quick announcement. I just wanted to thank Board Member Crossett for attending the curriculum review today. It started at 2:30. We got an opportunity to look at some things that they're trying to utilize with our kindergarten through second grade, and then they also showed us some of the curriculum that is used with our high schoolers as well. So I know that we will probably be hearing about that a little bit further into the next year. Superintendent Murphy, correct, and we look forward to that. So thank you.
Thank you. Other members? Dr. Moffitt, and then we'll go to Member Mapp.
So I wanted to say I had an opportunity to meet a few parents at the Parent Leader Holiday snack. It was good, thank you, and congrats to them on a great year so far. Additionally, I wanted to say thank you to the Winton Hills Girls Book Club, because we finished our book. We read Sharon Draper's book, Out of My Mind, and we saw the movie on Monday, and it was awesome. And so if anybody has any connections, they would love to meet Ms. Draper, because they have a couple questions for her about that book. And lastly, I want to say thank you to the Principal Vota and the Aiken staff. They were very, very helpful with the situation this week, so I wanted to make sure that I shouted out to them. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you. Other announcements? Member Mapp?
Yes, I just want to give a huge congratulations and kudos to Data Montessori's music department, specifically Miss Janine Jason, Miss Sarah Gannon, who's with the Suzuki program, and Mr. Brian, who is leading our orchestra students. And they did an amazing job at the winter contest. And all of our great musicians that performed, it was just awesome. Thank you to the parents that showed up in large droves. Thank you to everyone that had a hand in that at Data Montessori. And then I also just want to give a thank you to all of the organizations, all of the churches, families that are just helping to support our students during the holiday season with food drives, coat drives, all of the above, to just make sure that our students and families are well taken care of and prepared and supported throughout this time.
Thank you. Vice President?
I'm coming back. Thank you, Board Member Moffitt, for reminding me. I want to give a huge shout out to the lovely young ladies at Chase Elementary. I also took part in the book club, and we read the book, The Girl Who Drank the Moon. Very interesting book. It was a great time for the 4 weeks that we were able to get together to kind of discuss this book, discuss the vocabulary, and really allow the girls to kind of lead the discussion in what they thought the book truly meant and what really actually happened at the end of the book. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Smith. Yes.
Thanks, everybody. As we moving on, and now we'll go to the presentations. I was trying to expedite, but we have. No. I was kind of passing over some of the announcements, and I'm glad the superintendent caught me regarding especially the retirements and now presentations.
Yes, ma'am. We have 3 brief presentations, all out of the Office of Secondary Education. First, our Assistant Superintendent, Amy Randolph, is going to come and give you an overview of what's happening with secondary education, including our high schools. We'll follow that up with Emily Maroney is here. Happy to see her with our college update, and then adult education brought to us by Ms. Robbie Thomas.
All right. Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Bolton, Vice President Weinberg, members of the board, Treasurer Wagner, and Superintendent Murphy. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the work happening in our Office of Secondary Education. Next slide, Rob. We are comprised of 5 departments. We have athletics, adult education, college, career technical education, college, career, community resource center, and then also we have 16 of our high schools, which would also include our K-12 Spencer, 312, and then virtual/GDA. So our departments are working diligently to support district strategic plan goals and developing systems that align our work. I am just going to do a highlight. Initially, I had a few more slides, but since you're going to be partnered up with a few of my team members today, I'm going to shorten up a little. So just sharing a highlight from each. Our adult education program this year, they earlier won 3 awards from the Ohio Department of Higher Education, so exceeding enrollment target, most performance-based improvement, and outstanding student persistence. Athletics, they are working on a lot of different programs, but one thing that they really want to celebrate is the nutrition grants that they've been working on. So they have over $100,000 in grants there. Also, Josh has been working with his team to focus on creating a data system around GPAs and student athletic participation. So in looking at just first quarter, they were able to show that students involved in athletics first quarter had a higher attendance and higher GPA than students not participating. Probably not overly surprising to many of you, but it's good to have the data to show that as well. Our career tech team has been working to increase internship opportunities and has already exceeded the goal for this year. The team also recently attended the Equity Lab to review data and begin the work on the Perkins Plan for next school year. Our CTE program also is partnering with many businesses, and Tri-Health expansion has had a positive impact. They've already met the goal this year because of the Tri-Health School to Work program for internships in the district. Our college team is celebrating. They had an amazing college week that provided access to many of our students getting on college campuses. The team also has worked to increase CCP participation and has increased by over 312% just since last school year. So very exciting information there. Our College and Career Community Resource Center hosted in November a Drop the Mic series where students had the opportunity to meet local minority business owners and learn strategy around successfully developing their own business. Also, in that department, we are working to pilot a CPS Edge program that would allow students to intern within our own internal departments for hands-on work experiences. So you can go to the next slide, Rob. We have many opportunities to celebrate high schools in general, but I just put a few up here, so you can go to the next one. So just a couple of highlights that I find to be really exciting. Aiken, they were a spotlight school in the New Tech Network News earlier this year. Euler had a site visit from Director Dakin from ODEW. We, I think, have celebrated Taft a few times for some of their recent accomplishments. My personal favorite today, CPA, voted Best Public High School by the Family Choice Award in Cincy Magazine. We also have Virtual High School. They hosted their peer leadership group hosted a career fair on their campus so that students could have opportunities for career after school. Woodward has been working with our social studies department, and Dave Traubert wanted to give them a shout out for their data reflection and their engagement strategies in their high school. Hughes is working with Cincinnati Children's and our facilities team to expand their medical center with Children's Hospital, and another celebration from Hughes last week. They did earn their STEM reaccreditation last week, so they are officially good to go on their STEM designation, so shout out to them. And something that was really exciting to me when I was at West High a few weeks ago, they had a paper newspaper, and I said, I really want a copy of that newspaper. And I did not realize it was there. I did not realize they had a student newspaper, and they have had one. They just celebrated their 95th anniversary. They have had a student newspaper since the beginning of the school, so that was really awesome. And they're also working with Mike to see Mike Turner around. The teacher is also Career Tech certified, so they may be able to expand a program there. And then also our Zoo Academy is celebrating their 50th year anniversary, so hopeful to do a presentation with them in the spring in partnership with the zoo. Overall, high school, just that many schools participated in. Over the summer, there was the Bigger Than Sneakers Summer Academy, where students were able to design the North Star shoe, where you see a picture up there, and then they sold that at the Blink Cincinnati, so that was a great experience for some of our students. We had National Merit Scholars at Clark, Spencer, and Walnut Hills. And we had our 4th Career Symposium in partnership with Grad Cincinnati, and we had 7 of our high schools represented there. So we're also working with several other departments in our district. I know initially I was coupled up with the elementary education presentation a few weeks ago. So a lot of the work that we do is in alignment with them. We're doing the 8th grade math collab. We've done the Algebra 1 collab. We're doing an ELA 2 specific professional development, instructional reviews, school tier support meetings bi-weekly with our curriculum instruction team, and then we're doing STEM coach walkthroughs. We also have, like I said, with the STEM coaches as a new addition and to support our teachers and students in 10 of our high schools. We're also doing regular EMIS meetings around graduation. We're doing weekly high school huddles, and we are focusing on track criteria for graduation. So I believe in SAC-Cal last month, board member Craig had talked about we're really needing to get out of the emergency room when we talk about graduation. So can you click that link, Rob? One of the things we've been working with the high school counselors on is really starting to track starting in the 9th grade. But we've created what an on-track student would look like by grade level. So this has been shared with all of our counselors, and So right now, we have graduation sheets for every 12th grader in the district, every 11th grader, and by the end of January, we should be able to track. You can scroll down. So this would be, this is by grade level on how we would determine if a student is on track. So that's something that we're working on there. You can go back. Thank you. So also looking at data overall and impacts on graduation, our 2024 cohort shows an overall improvement, and 2025 is on track for that as well. I know that President Bolton also asked about tracking by school, which we do. It's a current practice within every high school. They have senior success meetings, usually weekly, some bi-weekly. We're also tracking by subgroup. We're tracking credits. We're tracking the readiness. We're tracking the competency. So some of the data, because I know we often talk around like Algebra 1 proficiency versus competency. So in order to actually meet the graduation requirement, students have to earn competency versus proficiency in Algebra 1. So while our proficiency rate is 36% for Algebra 1 last year, our competency was 52.5%. For ELA, the proficiency 41%, and the competency was 58%. So just want to share the difference between wanted to share that data as we talk about students needing an alternative pathway versus meeting competency. Also, a celebration for AP courses is last year we had 70% that scored a 3 or better, which is a great outcome, especially when we think about post-secondary readiness. And then we also this year, Craig Hoover said we have our highest percentage of students in AP courses. So that's a data celebration there. Something I'm really excited about is we've re-engaged our Beyond the Tassel Committee. I know there's been a lot of talk about My Tomorrow, what did that look like? And so when I was a principal, we did a lot of work around that. Under Superintendent Murphy's leadership, when she was an assistant superintendent, she started Beyond the Tassel. So we're looking at, we have re-engaged that committee. So that committee has a variety of stakeholders. We have counselors, we have district office, we have principals, just a variety of stakeholders that are really focusing on the mission of our district. So you can go to the next slide. So the mission that we have had as a district and that is current is that our graduates would be highly sought after by universities, employees, and military, and access direct pathways to fields that offer genuine economic mobility and build generational wealth. So when we started that committee back up this year, we really looked at that. We looked at the guiding principles to ensure that we stay in alignment with the work that the district is doing. So as we look at the components, we have 4 subcommittees. Go to the next slide. So one of the subcommittees is working on graduation requirements specifically. One is working on graduation strategies and aligning to moving out of the emergency room, student engagement, and post-secondary readiness. So post-secondary readiness is going to be on the report card this upcoming school year, so it will be a component for our high schools. So it's really important that we're spending time there. So on our most recent report card, although we did not receive a score for it, they gave us what an anticipated score would have been, which was a 45.4%. You can flip to the next slide, Rob. So the newest language update states that they are working on the calculation. So in reviewing data for cohort 2024, which is what would be on our next report card, I've been working with EMIS, and we've calculated, and we believe a projection of over 60% on this component, which would be 2, maybe 3 stars. They haven't released what that would look like yet on the stars. So if you flip this to the last slide. So this is based off of where we fell as a district based on cohort 2023 and that 45%. So this is where many of our schools would have fallen for post-secondary readiness for cohort 2023. So the upcoming report card will be based off of cohort 2024, and that's the one that I said is, I think we were projecting close to 65%, and many of our schools were at, over half of our schools were at 3, 4, or 5 stars for that, if our projections are all on track. But this is a year behind. So this is based off of what was on the most recent report card, where our schools would fall. So I know that was a lot of information, but
Well, I appreciate
any
you doing
questions
it.
for me right now?
Appreciate you doing it as quickly as you did it. Very frankly, this is as much information as I think I've seen about high schools in a long time. I appreciate it as a person that loves high schools. Members have questions for the Assistant Superintendent. Yes, sir, Mr. Lindy.
How can we be helpful?
How can we be helpful?
I think right now, one of the things we're really looking at is really, especially as we move into this middle school model, some of the data that we have shows the 7th and 8th graders specifically across the district weren't making a year of growth. So I think as we think about this, how do we ensure that we have career exploration opportunities for our 7th and 8th graders? So when we start looking at that and getting students ready for that post-secondary readiness piece, I also think that creating a model for them that will really allow our 7th and 8th graders to be successful itself is just going to be a huge help. I'm really, really excited about if all of my data calculations are right, I think we're going to be like in a really great place for post-secondary readiness at the high school level, which is going to have overall impact on stars across the board for the district. So I think right now, I think just supporting the work around post-secondary readiness is where we are.
Other questions, comments? Dr. Moffett?
So if you go back to slide 3, Rob. It's good stuff, good stuff. I am super excited about Aspire because I've been to their graduation for a couple years, and I think they are kind of like a little known secret for CPS. We don't, I posted their graduation on my website when I went to when I had the pictures, and people were like, I didn't even know we had that. And that's amazing to me that people don't know that we are offering some really good stuff for adult education and just outside the box education in our district. So I really wanted to put that up there and keep that up there for a second so people really see that we have programming here, and it is 3 stars. It's really, really good. They're doing great stuff. So I wanted to say congrats to you and your team for that. Another thing, I have a suggestion at the end, but beyond the tassel, the first time I'm hearing about it, and I really like it. It sounds really, really good. It's nice to know that that was started previously and that you're bringing that forward, so thank you for that. Is there a possibility that we could have some community engagement in there? I know she's probably already thinking where I'm gonna go, but maybe the community's been asking for ways that they can get involved, so that sounds like a natural way to maybe increase some community members in there. And I was going to ask, were there community stakeholders already invited?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things to say around that is this work around workforce readiness is critically important in addition to valuing our college entrances and acceptances. And so the more and more adults we can get, community members involved in this, the better. It also lends itself to our Business Advisory Council.
Okay.
So you'll hear more about that as well, which is really community and industry driven in terms of providing what is needed for what's next for our kids.
I was going to ask you about that one. Rob, that's slide 10. If you could go to slide 10 and keep that there for 1 second, because I was going to ask you, I was the liaison with the Business Advisory Council, and they were looking for ways to get in. So I was going to ask that question, but I know we've got some agencies that, like the NAACP really wants to get involved. Community members want to get involved. So maybe this is a way too. My last question is around middle school preparedness for high school and beyond. So as we look at middle schoolers and their readiness, I know we've seen some of the data around their academic achievement, some of it around their social emotional learning. Are you able, or are you all thinking about taking some baseline data from them now and then comparing that to this time next year once we've implemented middle schools to see if that improves? Like, are you all putting things in place now? I feel like you probably are, but I'm wondering, is there going to be, or is there any way that we can look and see how they're ready now for high school and beyond, and then measure that over time?
Yeah, and I think right now, John leads the middle school committee, but what I would say is we will have 3 sets of data because we will have our K-8, well, we really will have 4. We'll have our K-8s, our middle school model, our students that are staying in a 7 through 12 model, and then we will have, what's the other, K-12, 7 through 12, and middle school, and just K-8s. So right now, we know that when we look at the K-8s, they tend to score a little higher on our state assessments, and I think it's probably because they don't have 7 or 8 bells a day. They spend a little more, maybe 4 teachers, 5. They have a little less of a strenuous schedule. So I think they're looking at like what the bell day would look like and how to make sure to incorporate extra time for ELA, math, really looking at, where are they coming in, especially since we'll have so many different entry points. But I think that's always data that we keep in the forefront.
Well, I think CPS tends to be very innovative, so keep some data so we can make some write some white papers in the future, for sure. But thank you for the information, I appreciate it.
Other members, Member Matt?
Yes, thank you for the presentation and sharing the various highlights that are happening within our high schools. My questions are around, I want to start with the career and technical education slide that you presented on page 4. So the School to Work program, I know that this is in partnership with Tri-Health. Can you share what schools, I thought it was just Riverview, but can you share what schools have access to this School to Work program with Tri-Health and what the actual percentage was last year to let us know how, what that increase looked like? I know it's about 10%, but just what that previous percentage was.
Yep. So what I'll say on the Tri-Health is I do not have, there are 5 schools. I do know that it's 5. And I know that just because I was reviewing this with Mike today. I want to say it's Hughes. Let me not guess. I'll just email you the 5. But there are 50 students right now that participate in the Tri-Health partnership. But right now we have over 260 students that are currently in an internship. It might not just be Tri-Health. They were just celebrate Tri-Health has really increased the number because they went from 1 to 5 schools this year, so that has helped. But so the 10% last year, I believe Mike said they ended the year at 240, and right now they're already at almost 270. So we still have second semester to get in there.
Okay, perfect. So with that, when we're looking at the internships, what opportunities do our students have in maybe, I guess, being hired on after like graduation? What opportunities are presented to the students, given the fact that they are given access to these internships? I'm just looking at what other opportunities are they able to be presented with upon completion of the internship?
So for this Tri-Health specific, they do have the option to go straight into work, but I did ask Mike that same question today only because I'm going to talk about this evening at 7:50 as well. So he shared that many do, especially the ones that participate in the School to Work program, they end up going to college. But so he did say it's very difficult to track that because it's all self-reported. So a student can say, I am doing that, but then when they check back in 2 years later, they are not. So that is an area for us as a district that we're working on. Emily, Mike, and myself have really been talking about how do we track that, but the opportunity to have or work in one of these actual businesses is there. It's just, do they choose to accept that or take a different pathway?
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is around the graduation on track criteria. I like that you all have fleshed out, the opportunities for us to be able to track, or for families to be able to track whether their child is on the course to fulfilling the criteria for graduation, as well as for the students, because this is really helpful for them to be able to know and have conversations with their counselors, with their teachers, with their parents. So I think that this is great. What I am hoping for, and maybe you all are already considering this, is if we will be able to be presented with data from each high school of, where the 9th grade students are, where the 10th grade students are in terms of being on track with this criteria.
Yes, so we definitely have that. Where they're going to have all of the sheets updated by January 31st, especially because 9th grade, the criteria requires first semester data, because you really wouldn't be off track quite yet based on our document, but we can definitely give an update. We have that by school for each grade level, and we have it broken down by on track with credits, on track with competency, and on track with SEALs. So we could break that down and give an overview.
Okay, perfect. And then just lastly, can you, because I'm looking at just the data that you have shared, and I know that you're projecting that this year's cohort would improve, right? But just looking at last year's data, it's reflecting that we have some intense work, right, to do with our high school students and getting them to where they need to be in terms of the expectations for high school, but also post-secondary opportunities as well. And so if you could just dig a little bit further, share a little bit more information about just what the, I guess the intentionality would be, or the focus would be to help support our students and just kind of turn that data around. I know it takes time, obviously, but just kind of what you all's focus is and plan is to just really strengthen that work there.
Yeah. So I will say, I believe Kathy Spellman did share this earlier, so it is going to take some time for sure, but we should move from 1 star to 2 stars for our overall graduation for the upcoming report card. So when we think about how to continue to improve in alignment with the strategic plan goal, we really are focusing a lot on, like you said, the student conversations. The counselors are meeting individually with students. Like I said, we've implemented they've been doing, some of the schools have been doing this, but now it is pretty standard across the board. The senior success meetings, and again, going back to really how do we start looking at that earlier, because it's almost impossible to catch up every single year. So really focusing on that. It's to go back to Dr. Moffitt's question for a second. We recently at the Beyond the Tassel Committee meeting last week just said what members are missing. So something that was brought up was parents. We probably need some parents on this committee. So I think I stopped LaRonda in the hallway and said, another task, LaRonda. So I think she's smiling, so that's good. So we really do want to be intentional about educating students, educating parents, making sure that everyone understands what it actually means to graduate, because it changes pretty frequently in the state of Ohio. I think we're on the 3rd set in the last 6 or 7 years. I know the schools are working really intentionally around making sure that even staff understand. Like some teachers really might not fully understand past the scope of their work. So really, I think the first step was aligning what we need by grade level on track, and really having a data system that is succinct across all of the high schools so that we can regularly monitor, have those conversations, see what supports they need. And most of their senior success teams include their resource coordinator, high school counselor, a teacher, principal. So really honing in on that work, and the earlier that we can prevent, the better. Another opportunity is something that I've been talking about with Superintendent Murphy and others, is how to support our MLL students. Many of them are, especially at West High and Dater, they don't finish in the 4-year time period, or they don't finish because they choose to go to work or have to go to work. I shouldn't say choose, many have to. So we think about what implications could be if we were able to create a program, not necessarily like virtual high school, but where there is flexible scheduling, opportunities to some maybe morning courses. If you have to work during the day, maybe we have some evening courses. So I think that we've been talking about also supporting that population and working with the board policy around the individualized graduation plans for them. So I think we have some opportunities to grow our graduation rate in general if we can support that population better.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll just add, I remember when I was in the high schools, one of the things that we did do was we had quarterly parent and student meetings. And so we would have our counselors, we would have our teachers there, obviously, to talk about what those graduation requirements entailed, you know, how they had to, what was required for them to earn their points on the end of course exam. So just providing opportunity for everyone to be aware, but having those meetings quarterly for each grade level, 9th through 12, to still, you know, support the students and families, and also try to ensure that they are on track.
Definitely. Yep. We appreciate that feedback, and I will add that in, especially because I think at parent conferences, you have a great opportunity to do that. So.
Thank you, Member Mapp. Other comments, Vice President?
Yeah, so I have a comment, not really a question, but just wanted to follow back up on the School to Work program. I actually got the opportunity to go to their graduation last year, and I'm so happy that you all are highlighting this program. For years, it went, I wouldn't say unnoticed, but it kind of did. And I'm happy that we're highlighting that and sharing the opportunities that we're giving our students. I think it was 16 students graduated from CPS. They had 2 additional students who weren't from CPS, so a total of 18. And I know moving forward, as you stated, their goal is to increase the program. And really, after these students graduate and they go to college, of course, they want them to come back and they will immediately be hired. So I think it's a great program to promote, and I look forward to seeing the class for this year as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Craig?
I'll be really short because I actually have a heart out, so
You have
I
2.
appreciate all the folks who are still going to be doing presentations. But I just wanted to say, I think the only thing that I want to add is just, and I think you mentioned it really briefly, but we really do need to be paying attention to 7th and 8th grade. And specifically, I'm really concerned with math, specifically in that transition, because Algebra 1 is not a easy subject. And truly, some students may take it 8th grade, some students may take it 9th. And that transition may also be affected by where you took your math classes and what opportunities that you have to grow within where you were at and be supported. And I know that there was some of the worry that some students had, or some principals and staff and others had expressed about kind of the timing of when students were completing that algebra work within our 7 through 8, or through our 7 through 12 schools, because at the time that was somewhat of the challenge, right? Is that we have some students who are on top of it, ready to go at 7th grade, and their math scores reflect that. We saw that in our numbers of how people passed algebra. And so I just want to make sure we're also still paying attention to that as we look at the high school numbers, because again, in order to graduate with a degree or with a diploma, state of Ohio, this is one of the things you have to meet as a standard. And so I think it's important for us as we think about high school, we think about folks who are getting career ready. The other thing I will quickly say is that I think that adds into some of the stuff I've heard from folks who are looking to use some of the career tech and other programs, is that our students aren't necessarily academically ready in some of the career tech apprenticeships and stuff like that as they leave school to do it. And so I think the more we're looking at that career tech as career ready, as opposed to just passing the state standard, the more we get students ready to then be able to go in and be employed in these different places and be able to do some of these different internship projects. And I want to commend actually the superintendent, because after our conversations at the last board meeting, there was an opportunity to connect with some of the folks who have been reaching out and asking to help. And so she took the initiative to reach out to them with a couple of connections that I think are really helpful to work on that. But I think that's, for me, one of the things I want to make sure we're looking at as we think about these newer range high schools, is we are going to have smaller schools, but that does mean that we have a more dedicated need to make sure career tech is not just you pass the certification at the state level and yet you still can't do the work.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. That's part of that beyond the tassel in more ways than one. Very good. Thank you. I think we're ready for the next presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Good evening, esteemed board members, Superintendent Murphy, Treasurer Wagner. If my voice goes in and out, I apologize ahead of time. I'm on a trifecta respiratory illness, so I'm going to do my best here. I am Emily Maroney. I am the college manager here at Cincinnati Public Schools, and it is my joy and honor to present about college, all things college. College is a conduit to career. I know that firsthand. I'm well aware of that. However, I love college. And so as the college manager, I have a team. I have what I call my college bound, my college specialist, one over College Credit Plus, one over college specialties. So really working with me in the ins and outs programmatically. I'm also over district advisory. So while that is broader to academic excellence, social and emotional well-being, and post-secondary preparedness, it sits out of my suite. I also get the honor to work with 2 lead counselors here at the district, as I get to be the district representative for our 72 in-building school counselors. One thing I really want to point out is that we truly believe that ensuring every student not only sees the potential of their dreams, but engages with college-bound resources, people, programs, and tools to help them achieve their dreams and not just stop there, but to thrive. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So when I came into this role, I really said, let's thematically build upon what we're trying to do within the college vein of post-secondary preparedness. So as we are looking in the 6th grade year, we're looking at choosing that 7th through 12th grade building that fits that post-secondary interest and those academic skill sets. We built what are called high school program highlights. And so when we're looking at K through 6 buildings, they're using these programmatic tools to show students and families what each high school is offering. When we have advisory in our classrooms in 7 through 12, we are utilizing this still in our K through 8 buildings, showing these highlight videos where each high school got to represent themselves, what they can offer, and in what vein to what academic pursuit or what career pursuit in that as well. And is it a sports team? Does it have strong sports? Maybe it's strong academically and sports-wise. And so we have students go, I think I'm gonna go there. In grade 7, we aspire. In grades 8 and 9, we connect and then expose. Grades 10 and 11, we're exploring. And we're building upon this programmatically to grade 12, where we're enrolling our students. So we're building not only upon activities built into classrooms, saying what is a career, or what am I really interested in, and do I need college to get there? Do I need just CTE to get there? What does this merging look like? We're building these experiences to then get students out and on campuses, and out and seeing themselves in maybe an HBCU environment, or talking to a mentor who said, you know what, I originally didn't see myself going to college, but here I am now. And so building through that with our college programming to really, again, exposure to choice, exposure to opportunity. Next slide, please. At the district level, we host. You may have heard about our College Week. We hosted the 2nd to last week in October. We're on our 4th year of doing this, and it just grows and grows. We talk about athletics in college, our academic pipelines, the big question on the table, affordability. What is college spirit? Everyone has college spirit, even if they didn't go to college. It's often with sports teams. We cover a scholarly 60 seconds. We have online website opportunities that talks about how and when to make final decisions, the differences in scholarship and aids, analyzing an offer letter. You get an offer letter, what does that mean? And it's just 60 seconds to really go through that. And we have seen hits by parents, students, community members looking into that, especially at critical timelines and time points in a student's trajectory. We also, and I didn't add it to the slide, have ACT boot camps that we fund in our high schools, as well as FAFSA nights to support our families. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about our college pipeline programming. Next slide. UC Early IT, we currently have 134 students enrolled in our UC Early IT program. You can see up here or on the slide in front of you our partners that are involved in this. This does impact grades 9 through 12, and they're taking 6 IT courses up to. They can even take more if they would like to. They have direct admission with completion of those 6 IT courses, as well as college math, English, and humanities with a C or higher, directly into UC School of Information Technology. Let's say they don't do that, they can get preferred review for any student that completes 2 of those courses with a C or higher. They're getting access early on to internships, the UC IT Expo, summer camp, experiential activities, and opportunity to co-op between the summer after high school graduation and their matriculation year. I'm happy to report that of those students that have historically been in that pipeline, that we had 49 who decided to go to the University of Cincinnati as a university. Of that, 29 went directly into the School of Information Technology, and this spring, we have 3 students that are graduating from having done that pipeline. Next slide, please. I heard you say it earlier in this meeting, we're in a teacher shortage. That is no news to anyone. However, we are combating that as a district. We are the first district in the state of Ohio with Miami University to have taken on what is called Teach Cincinnati. And from that, it's with Miami University. This again impacts grades 9 through 12 for our students. With that, students are taking education courses, having conversations about the critical components of education and the power of education in our communities. They're getting ACT prep assistance. They're traveling to Oxford. They're getting access to Miami Bridges programs, which are happening throughout the school year with other school districts. But what is beautiful about this pipeline, and I say it is beautiful, is the guaranteed admissions and scholarships that come with it. I am happy to report that as of today, there is not a student in this pipeline that has matriculated that is not a full ride. So they have made it work to the students' benefit. They are participating in learning living communities on the latter end, taking their courses together. What benefits our district is they get priority in student teaching placement in our district and preferred hiring at the end with Cincinnati Public Schools. We currently have 22 former CPS students in this pathway at Miami University. Next slide, please. With Road to Lindner, College Credit Plus pipeline, This impacts grades 7 through 12. There's summer programming that actually happens more so during the school time for students in those years, sophomore to junior and junior to senior years. They have near peer mentors in mathematics by UC faculty, greatly needed, as we know with math, College Credit Plus courses in business, and college algebra. Students who complete this pathway are guaranteed admissions, once again, to Lindner College of Business. We have 50 students currently in this pipeline. Of that, we have 4 students who have matriculated to Lindner School of Business. I also was remiss to report that we have 98 students currently in the TEACH program, the former slide. I would love my water, thank you. Thank you so much, Robbie. This is a newer one, our Miami Farmer School of Business with Accountancy. We have yet to be able to successfully embed a CCP course in this. However, we are able to offer immersive and exploratory opportunities in entrepreneurship, economics, and accounting courses, mentorships with business affiliates, as well as immersive campus experiences and site visits to local and regional firms. It is looking at accountancy. However, as our partner at Farmer School's Business says, it takes a unique individual who wants to be an accountant, and I know that, but as we need more people in the field, and we actually have seen students that are really excited about accounting as a field of exploration. I look forward to sharing more about this program in the future. Right now, we have 16 students interested in what this pathway proposes. And last but not least, you all have heard word of the College Innovation Pathway that was approved to start in last May, this academic year, at Schroeder High School. We had 27 families apply before the deadline in May of last year. A summer bridge component, since we are on an innovative waiver, if you are not familiar with what that is, the state approves an innovative waiver that waives the need for certain CCP requirements for student participation. In this case, it's the GPA. That is because our students are signing on to participate for their 9th grade year. Many of them don't have a GPA. With that, we said we will be hosting a summer bridge that focuses on both the math and English components of preparedness to be able to take college courses. With that, 12 students are successfully in our first ever cohort at Schroeder High School for this. It is an associate's while in high school degree. So at the end of this, students will be walking the stage both at the University of Cincinnati and at Schroeder High School. Outside of that summer bridge opportunities in years 1 and 2, the student attends courses directly at Schroeder High School. They take college courses while what we call embedded, so taught in the classroom. Year 3, they go directly to Blue Ash, and year 4, UC Maine. We are in the recruitment cycle for year cohort 2 of that. Next slide, please. College Credit Plus, also underneath me. So I wanted to give some scope to last year because we actually don't have full data on it until the start of this year. So when looking at it, we had about 2,400 courses that were taken. That comes out to just over 7,000 credit hours, 1.8 million in financial savings for families. And of those courses that students took, 73 of them were taught embedded in high schools by a high school teacher that was credentialed by the state and the university to be able to teach such. In total, we had 882 students enrolled, 327 male identifying, 555 female identifying. Next slide, please. So if we look at yearly comparisons, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. We had a 35% participation increase in students participating in CCP between academic year 22-23 and 23-24. We had an 84% increase in Black male identifying student participation. The reason I actually bring that out is that was one of our goals. It was one of our lower enrollment identities, and we were able to increase that by 84%. We saw between 2 years a 40% increase in tuition savings, and I'm happy to report that we are at a 95% course passage rate, meaning that our students are taking those courses with them for college credit. You can see the breakdown here of our tuition savings over 3 years, as well as our credit hours, the number of courses taken in growth, and our unique participants. Next slide, please. College Credit Plus, so where are we? So College Credit Plus falls into summer, fall, spring as a 3-term sequence as supported and sponsored by the state. I will identify that on this slide, I made a copy and paste error. So it is not 182 that are enrolled. That was a former slide. It's 103. So we're not too far off, okay? With that, male identifying is at 294. Female identifying is at 509. I can send an updated slide to you if you would prefer later on. What I would like to point out is we are already at 1,700 courses taken thus far this academic year. We've increased our embedded courses to 86. And something to really highlight is when I look at the numbers of last year's fall enrollment and this year's fall enrollment, just looking at those 2 terms, we grew by 51% in CCP enrollment, which I would like to toot my team's horn for, so thank you. Next slide, please. So some highlights. Next slide. We have 310 students engaged in a college pathway or pipeline this academic year. We have increased, actually come back to that one. We have 47 college or university partners in our college consortium. We meet regularly, sometimes more often than I think they want to meet, to talk about what are our needs of Cincinnati Public Schools and what are our institutions doing, not only to recruit our students, but to retain them. Retention is very close to my heart. In an academic year, we produce out of our college district team over 40 college-bound programs and events for students, in addition to our 7th through 12th grade college milestone programming and lessons in classrooms, which you saw on our slide 3, I believe. This past class of 24 took with them $10.2 million in CPS partner-based dedicated scholarships. What I mean by that is only CPS students can get that scholarship, and or they hold a scholarship, a number of slots for Cincinnati Public School students. To give you some reference in that, that was at $1.9 million for the class of 2022. So we have been able to get out and about, have really intentional and passionate, I don't know if you can tell I'm really passionate conversations with stakeholders to say, invest in us, and we will invest together in our future. So we're up from that. 2 things, and one is not on the slide because I just got the data yesterday, but we increased our FAFSA application completion by students and families by 11% this past class of 24. It was not of any effort of me, it was of the amazing efforts of team, of school counselors, of my team, of people in the community that were coming together to support our families with mixed residency status, as well as students who maybe didn't have someone who could walk them through that process knowledgeably. Again, we hosted some FAFSA nights here in the district, but again, I will not take all credit for 11% of that growth. However, I still won't take credit for this one. I just got the facts and figures. We sit around on a 6-year average at 48% of our students matriculating the fall after graduation to college. That figure doesn't surprise me, even though our 3E data often indicates a 71% intent to enroll. When I cross-reference intent to enroll by student by their ability on GPA to enroll right out of high school, we're sitting pretty healthy in our average. That being said, for the class of 2023, 648 students from that class matriculated the following fall to college. This past year, from the efforts of teams, we have raised it to 959. So that is a 39% increase in college-going culture for our district. I would like to see what that looks like in retention, as I'm sure you all do, because enrolling doesn't mean the end point for them. But what I do know is that at a 2-year, so when we look at students post into the fall and looking at a 2-year, we know we have some gap year students that take a year out. We're sitting at 56% average of our students in college in a program, and sitting at a 74% retention rate currently for that. So thank you, and I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Do members have questions or comments for this, I would say, pretty stellar report, like some of the others? Okay, Vice President.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you so much. We can hear your passion. We appreciate you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Crossett?
Same as Board Member Weinberg. Keep going. It's great news, and as long as we can get the trajectory up, let's keep going. It's great. Thank you.
I'd like to offer, I'm happy to meet with any of you as well. I met with Board Member Crossett to go over this. He's like, okay.
Member Moffett, and then we'll go to MAP.
So I'm super excited because you're excited. It's contagious, but most importantly, I think the numbers are really, really good. I'm going to ask my questions super quick because, can you go to slide 7, Rob? Because 7, 8, and 10, you see early IT is very impressive to me because I am a Bearcat. I know I built some buildings over there because I didn't pay a lot in tuition, but I'm very interested in the number of students that from CPS that go there. How many of them are getting like the Cincinnati Pride Grant or utilizing that Cincinnati Pride Grant?
So when a student matriculates over there, how they look at the financial aid of that is through FAFSA first, other scholarship and aid, and then often they put the Pride Grant as kind of that gap closure unless they need to flip the order of that. Okay. So I don't know off the top of my head. Jack Miner would say, any student who needs it. And so that can be an answer in itself, but I'll reach out to admissions and ask for our students what that average is sitting at needing the Pride Grant. I will say because broadly and nationally we see what gap closure funds are in general and how difficult they are, even if it's 1,000, 5,000, 7,000. The Pride Grant is really a critical piece, and it is the reason why the majority of our students are choosing the University of Cincinnati as the choice school next.
Yes, and I met a couple of students this past summer that weren't aware of it, and they were Pell Grant eligible. Yeah. So that was a little concerning, but I know our staff is working super hard to your point with the numbers. I'm just wondering, is it an awareness issue, or is it just, they just don't qualify? So that would be
everyone qualifies. Every CPS grad qualifies.
Okay, yeah. That's even better. That's even better.
So it's an awareness thing. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. We can even put that out in a newsletter. So.
Number 8, slide number 8, if you can go there, Rob. I am actually having coffee with an Aiken grad who is benefiting from Miami University. I was trying to sneak that in there. But he is super excited, and I met the president of Miami University who keeps saying, Dr. Moffitt, I want to talk to you about your program. This is what you all are offering to our university. But he's Mr. Edward Johnson. We're having coffee on, and he said, I would like to tell you about my experience at Miami University. So I didn't even know we had this program, but I'm super excited that we're training educators, training students to be able to go into education. So we're kind of building our own workforce, which is amazing to me. So I wanted to give you a kudos for that, because this young man sought me out and actually asked me for coffee. So it's definitely working. This is an Aiken grad, and so I will make sure to connect him with you, because he could definitely be a success story. The last thing I wanted to say on slide number 10, with regard to accounting, I am aligned with Xavier University's Women in Business department, and they are specifically looking for CPS students to go into business majors around accounting. So I'm going to give that information to Superintendent Murphy to give to you, because they would like to have women go into business. I actually am now sitting on their board, but Xavier University, they've kind of thrown the net really wide, and you have schools right here that are interested in business. And they, while their focus is women, you need to be connected. So I'm going to send that. Her name is Karen Utzer.
Perfect.
And so I'm going to be sending that in just a second. But I want to say kudos to that, because we need to make sure that the connection with the community is already there, and you're doing great work. So thanks again.
Thank you. I'll also add, I unfortunately was out, but this past week, our team was able on my behalf to meet with the dean over Xavier School of Business. So we can even see how that merges more. And Mr. Johnson, we use him often because he is a superstar. So
We got it. And if you take that energy over to that meeting, we got all the money in the world, I promise you. So let us know how to continue to support you
Thank
in
you.
what you're doing. Thank you for working for our
Imagine if
students.
she were well.
yeah.
Yes, so thank you for the passion that you have. I also have a lot of passion and interest around this topic. So thank you for the presentation. My first question is around our students that are in the TRIO programs. How are we supporting and working with those students, such as like Upward Bound, and ensuring that not only do they go through the program, but they are also matriculating into our colleges and universities as well?
Absolutely. So I actually get to oversee with Javon, one of my specialists, our college access partners. So we have Upward Bound, we have YMCA Young Achievers, we have Breakthrough Cincinnati as part of that, and those do meet our trio. We know we don't have enough hands to do everything, and so through that, in our meetings, we do talk about not only the access to those programs for our CPS students, but additionally how those students are matriculating, be it through the year-long activities or the summer activities. Our school counselors are actually very in the weeds with that as well, with our access partners. So we do reports. We have what are called quarterly reports, where we look at the student information at the granular, and then we offer as a district where we can into those TRIO feeds. In fact, I just did a signature for a grant expansion for TRIO. So where we can, we know that it's kind of that fine line and balance. We host the students, we have access to the students, and TRIO is so relational, right? So once we can really pinpoint and piece those partnerships and those relationship networks for our students, on my end, transparently, it is very much that kind of data and making sure if I get a heads up, I've gotten a heads up before, hey, we're unable to get ahead with this student. We're running into blocks, we're running into this and that. I'm able to connect with school teams, merge together that and see it. But we have seen growth, actually, that's why our Upward Bound just actually expanded at UC, and we've seen that because we're able to produce the ability for students to have more opportunities in that pathway and program, and them to have access with us as well.
Thank you for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that information.
And we meet monthly. It's called the Access Leadership Team.
Okay, perfect. The other question, and you touched upon this, that I have is the 47 consortium of schools or colleges and universities. I don't know if this is presented anywhere, but I think it would be great if we were able to list and identify what those schools are that, you know, are within that portfolio, because I think that is definitely a great marketing tool to let, you know, people know where our students are attending. You may be able to add the scholarship, right, dollars that the students are receiving, but I think that's a great way to just showcase the relationships and the work that we are doing as a district in creating that college-going culture, and continue to possibly add to those partnerships.
Absolutely. So one thing I do have on hand that I can send first thing tomorrow morning is our National Student Clearinghouse shows exactly our institutions and how many students are enrolled. Our college consortium takes a little bit of a different twist, where it's more so partnership-based instead of student feeder-based. And so with that, I actually just uploaded that sheet today into our strategic plan update. So I can also send that as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then just lastly, and I don't know if you have any information around this, but I can imagine that you do, especially with some of the schools that we're working with locally. But I know that there's been a lot of restructuring within several of the universities pertaining to diversity and equity and inclusion departments. And so I'm just curious to know from your seat and your perspective, what do the implications look like for our students, and how can we support our students as they are either currently, in school or matriculating into school?
Right. That is a great point. And it's something that post new election results has been even more heightened, particularly as we looked at our mixed residency students. A large part of our growth in student transition to fall matriculation was with getting more students that have family members that might not have U.S. residency to be able to fill out FAFSA and go. So I'm actually very worried. I'm worried about what the implications of that are, as well as others in our district. And we've been having conversations about what does that mean, and how do we provide safe and also safe, secure, and informative methods and spaces for families to come and ask questions, and even for families to come ask questions who've had students who have matriculated. Like, we still remain to be a hub of answers in that. And so I don't have an answer. I wish I did. I'm kind of waiting. In fact, all of us are kind of waiting till January, because one day you'll hear they're Xing this. The next day you hear, in fact, I will tell you that the National College Attainment Network, NCAN, has put out a statement saying that they do not encourage for students without residency or families without residency to file the FAFSA currently. The Ohio Department of Education hasn't made a statement yet, and the National Department of Education has not made a statement. However, the FAFSA website itself does say, kind of caution without the words caution, a student who fills this out may have implication, and a student who has filled this out in former years. There is no guarantee. That's really scary for our families. When I've talked with some university presidents, actually, especially when there's been some closure of buildings. And so I will have a beautiful side conversation with you of that, because I don't want to blast out their response to me, because it does actually benefit and serve our students, not only in our district, but in our region and our nation. But yes, I have hope in how they have managed to meet state expectations of them in closures, while at the same time still providing those resources to those students in ways that we can have a side conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely be interested in continuing to have discussion offline. And if there are ways that, as you continue to move forward through the process, that if you could keep us informed so that we can make sure that we are advocating for our students and families.
I think the biggest advocating is here and now, in the moments of saying we see you, we hear you, and we are providing the spaces in which you can come and know that your information is secure and that you're not outed. Right? We are a public serving district, and in that, we just, even having you ask that question, I'm sure someone's heart is enlightened in that moment, and I will keep you engaged.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have lived through part of that once before, and it does impact the district. Mr. Crossett?
Yeah, I spent my career in accounting and studied accounting, so I really appreciate you mentioning that we're special. But I will, to follow on Board Member Moffitt and Mapp, I will connect you to my contacts in the accounting community here in Cincinnati. I'm sure there are not enough people going into the profession, so there will be a lot of people interested to help with your initiative.
Absolutely.
Also, I forgot to ask before, but I didn't really see any information about a pathway through Cincinnati State, especially when affordability is such a big question, and whether or not that could be emphasized.
Yeah, I am more than happy to present on that at another time. Their Be Great grant is open to Cincinnati Public School graduates. They can't go to a different institution without going to Cincinnati State and following through with that. However, they have a lot of great programs, and actually am on an email thread looking into where we can have some of our students who have graduated but might need to stay on with some additional resources, taking part in the Be Great grant and getting a college degree while still with us. So I would love to, with Ryan, when he does that, present.
Madam Treasurer.
Yes, I just wanted to announce that I sent Superintendent Murphy a note that the second floor would welcome Withrow interns in accounting.
Yes.
We do have an
Perfect.
internship program that we've been
Yeah.
doing, so having that pipeline would be awesome.
Amazing.
Great,
Amazing. Thank you.
great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We'll do the third presentation. And as the third presentation gets started, we appreciate board members that I know we've run over. And after we get through the meeting, we do have a brief executive session because the superintendent would like some guidance on a particular topic. But most important today, my favorite person in CPS. No, forget it. You're retiring and leaving now.
That's right.
You know, that's
It's
what
me.
happens. You
First of
fall
all,
to number 2.
down, because I'm short.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank the board for this opportunity and Superintendent Murphy and for the treasurer. I'm so sorry, but I'm the favorite person. But I also want to thank Dr. Moffett for her comments. And I was certainly thrilled when I saw that you made a comment on our Facebook page about our program. So it means a lot when we see board members comment about what we do. So I want the first slide, please, or it's slide 2, which brings me to this slide, which is about your comment about who we are and what we do. We're not new. I really wasn't here in 1840, although my grandson would ask me, really, Nana, were you? 1840, evening school in Cincinnati started for workers in Cincinnati, and it was an adult education program. That's how far back adult education was in Cincinnati. And what did they do? They taught immigrants to learn to speak English and to learn about our culture and history and government, the same kinds of things that we're doing now. So that's how long, that's our history of what we're doing. Slide 2. So when we talk about our purpose, or that's slide 3, please. Next slide. Not it. It is true, when adults learn, communities flourish. Okay, our purpose and our vision. What I want to say is when we worked on our purpose and our vision for adult education, which is what our staff worked on, the one thing we wanted to do was to make sure that it was well thought out, that it was intentional, and that we focus not only on the people that we serve, but the manner in which we serve them and what the impact would be on our city. Because what we knew was that our students often have had challenging experiences with their education, either because they didn't do well in school or their family wasn't supportive, or for a variety of reasons. So we knew that we had to have empathy from where they came from. And so we needed to build that into our services. Next slide, please. So with Aspire, we needed to offer free services. We offered day and evening classes, and I heard that kind of referenced a little bit about what do you need to do when the students in high school need to complete. Well, sometimes evening is what people do need, and so we're funded through the Ohio Department of Higher Education now, and that at one point in time you might have heard us called ABLE. And before ABLE, we were called ABE, so we've been around since the 1960s with Cincinnati Public Schools. And let me just say that that's through a competitive grant process. So it's not just a given. So about every 3 years, Cincinnati Public Schools, and whoever the leadership is in adult education, writes for the grant in a competitive process. And since the 1960s, the district has been afforded the opportunity to write for that and then has been funded. And so that's really commendable that we as a district has been awarded that opportunity and have been able to serve these students. So the grant this year is $1,326,566. We do not use general funds to support the program. We do get in-kind services, and which we are very grateful for. Our funds are 72.5% federal through the Federal Department of Education and 27.5% through the state. So rest assured, when we hear conversation about what's going to happen at the national level with the Department of Education, it does cause some discomfort and some concern. In doing that, we will serve 1,300 students. We will probably serve more than that. We operate 8 sites throughout the city. We work with things like River City, programs such as River City Corrections. We work at Tyson Foods, so we work with employers at Tyson Foods. We have 0.85 FTE administrators. We have 5 FTE adult educators. We have 2 senior support specialists. We have 2 paraprofessionals. We have 3 part-time non-contract hourly teachers. And with that limited staff, we serve 1,300 students. So rest assured, we work very hard every day and in the evenings. Slide 5, please. So what do we offer? If you'll back up 1 slide, please. We offer HSE, that's high school equivalency. That's GED and HiSET. Most of you think of high school equivalency as GED, and for many years it was GED. And now the state of Ohio has also approved another test, which is called HiSET. And we refer students either way, either for the HiSET exam or for the GED. HiSET's a little less expensive for our students, so sometimes we go that route for them. The GED is 4 tests versus 5, so that sometimes sounds like, well, let's go that route. But HiSET, it will break the RLA from the writing and from a multiple choice. And so sometimes they need that because we need to be able to see, is it the essay that's causing them trouble or is it the multiple choice? So we're really trying to discern what is best for the student. So we do that, and then we do workforce, and we will do more workforce if more workforce is open to the services that we offer. Tyson is ESOL, so many of their students are learning to speak English, and so we're coordinating and we're constructing our curriculum around what do the employees need to know to be more efficient at the work site. And then, of course, corrections. So at River City, we serve a lot of students there, and those students really are ready when they come in to work towards their high school diplomas, which will make them more successful once they leave the correctional facility and hopefully not ever go back to the correctional facility. So the other thing that we do with Aspire funds is we do integrated education and training. And it's really important when people are going to look for training that we're putting education and the training together. So they're not separate things, right? So we can be working on, we're going to improve our educational skills, so maybe working towards our GED or just upgrading our skills as we're working towards learning to be in the culinary program. We're doing construction, and they do Habitat for Humanity in construction. We're doing patient care assistance, and those students can go right into Drake Hospital as employees once they complete that program. We do phlebotomy with our students, and of course you can imagine they go right into drawing that blood right out of you. And that's with Making a Change Cincinnati. We do medical assistance. So whenever I go to, like today, I had my physical at UC, and I'm asking the person who's taking my blood pressure, where'd you get your training? Because I want to know, did they go through one of our programs? Hospital worker readiness with Mercy Neighborhood Ministries and independent electrical contractors. Those, I used to say gentlemen, but that's not the case anymore. Fortunately, we have women coming through that program too. We see a lot of those people in the spring. They're upgrading the skills to go into that program to be electricians, and then they're working with employers while they're going through the program to become electricians. So we're real happy with those opportunities as well. And those are all through the Aspire program. Next slide, please. The next thing we do, which we're super excited about, is through ODEW, and that's credit recovery. And those are for students who are 18 and older. And let me talk a little bit about students who are 18, or students who come to our program. We don't work with anyone who's younger than 16. But because we're housed in the same building with the virtual and digital, sometimes we get students who come knocking on our door with their mom. Usually it's mom, sometimes dad. And they want to get them into our program. And the first question is, have you already withdrawn from school? And if the answer is no, then the next question is, why are you knocking on our door? Because you need to go back to your high school, right? You don't need adult education. You need to go to virtual or to digital or wherever you came from. Because we want students to stay in school. That's where they belong. And so we will send them back in that direction, or to the customer help, or wherever they need to go. If they've already withdrawn from school, then that might end up being a different conversation, and it might not even be a Cincinnati public school. It could be a different school. Being in the same building with virtual or digital and having a good relationship with Mr. Rozier, then we can work through what's going on with the student, why is adult education an opportunity for this student, and to try to work through what's best, what's in the best interest for the student. Sometimes it's a student who maybe is 19 years old and maybe only has 3 credits, and so what is in the best opportunity for that student, and then we will work together to try to figure that out. But with this credit recovery program, sometimes we have students who are 22, 23 years old, and maybe they are missing some credits, maybe they didn't pass the end of course exam, 1 or 2 exams, and so we'll work with them. And our goal is, oftentimes they do want that high school diploma, and so we want them to get that high school diploma. And Cincinnati Public has been awesome to work with. The customer help desk has helped the student get their transcripts. We will work through with that student, and then, of course, we work with them for the end of course exam, which isn't a piece of cake, by the way. It's quite a challenging exam for our students. The next program that we have, next slide, please, is what's called ADP. It's the Adult Diploma Program, and it's the newest program that we offer. And that program is for students 18 and older, and what those students need to do is pass the work keys test. They have to earn a 12. It was a 14. It recently changed to a 12. And they have to earn 12 points in an industry-recognized credential. So we've just started that program. I think we have 5 students who are in the pathway for it, and I think 3 of them are just now completing. So that's an opportunity for our students. And what I want to say about that is Cincinnati Public is one of 7 sites in the state of Ohio to offer all 3 diploma options for adults. Over 80 sites in the state of Ohio may be offering one of those diploma options, but only one of 7 in the state of Ohio, and Cincinnati Public is one of those 7. And what I would tell you about the other 7, most of them are career technical institutions or community colleges. So for us, Cincinnati Public, to be a public school and to have the opportunity for adults to go in 3 different pathways to finish their high school education is really a phenomenal opportunity for adults, and we're real proud of that. Next slide, please. So here we are. This is who we are. Our goal this year is to serve 1,300. To date, that says 778, but when I recently looked, we're at over 800, which is over 60% of our goal. I have no doubt we will surpass our goal. We have already achieved over 40 students in our program have received their HSE, meaning they have passed the GED or high-set test. We have 5 students who have earned credit recovery diploma. We have 3 who have their ADPs. Our costs per student, how much do we serve our, are we able to serve our students for? A mere $1,022. So,
Treasurer likes that particularly.
so we're pretty frugal. Our enrollment goal for River City this year will serve 110 students who are in corrections. Tyson, we will help 50 students who are employed at Tyson improve their English. We will help 50 individuals who are with IEC and get involved in that program and stay in that program. And we will plan to serve 200 students in our IET program to get a credential in one of the programs that I showed you for their technical training. Next slide, please. So, when we help transition people into post-secondary, let me just tell you, we don't do it on our own. We couldn't do that for $1,000. We'd be miracle workers. So we have all these partners who help us, thank goodness. One of them is, one of our new partners this year is Chatfield Edge. And Chatfield Edge this year has worked with 5 of our students. 4 of them are now enrolled at UC, 1 of them at Cincinnati State. So those are students who came through the pipeline, got their GED or went through credit recovery, and now are enrolled in college. And Chatfield has assisted them. Because many of our students are either don't have parental support, they're first-year college students, so they need assistance. We have a partner with CityLink who help us with our PCA program in Drake Hospital. We have a partnership with Making a Change Cincinnati. Ohio Means Jobs helps with recruitment. Mercy Neighborhood Ministries helps us with our hospital readiness program, as well as STNA, and then our partnership with independent electrical contractors. So we find our partnerships are very valuable to us. Next slide, please. So how does this benefit the district? Because in about the year 2000, and yes, I was involved in adult education in 2000. In 2000, unfortunately, the Department of Education decided that finishing high school through a GED no longer counted as a completion for K-12. That was disappointing. So you might ask yourself, why is this important to the district? Well, here are some reasons. When we work with adults who have children in the district or who attended in the district, it improves the family engagement piece because we are part of the district. We are Cincinnati Public Schools. It enhances the community relationship when they know that Cincinnati Public is a part of the mission that we serve the adults. It has the economic benefit when we help adults improve their education, start earning a higher income, and then they pay higher taxes in the community. They role model for their children. When the parents go back to school and the children see the importance of education, it makes a huge difference. the reduced dropout rate, because a parent goes back to school, gets a GED, finishes high school, a better opportunity that the child will not drop out of school. The support that we give to immigrant families so that the parent speaks English at home, begins to speak English at home, while the children are learning to speak English in K-12. The improved school climate, and the fact that we, Cincinnati Public Schools, provide multiple diploma pathways. Next slide, please. So here we are celebrating the 3 certificates that Ms. Randolph referenced initially that we got this year. And if you ever come to our building, and we welcome you to come to our building, the 3 honors that we received are on our wall. And they're spaced very far apart because I told the staff, space them far apart because we're going to get more this year. And we need space for the next ones that we get this year. And before I came today, we get a risk analysis every year. And our risk analysis tells us, and Ms. Murphy got it today too, says, are we a high-risk program? No. We are the lowest risk that we can possibly be. It's like golf, you want a really low score. We can never be a 0 because we're always going to get 5 points because we're one of the highest funded programs in the state of Ohio. So we're always going to get 5 points. So when you see the 5 points, that's the best we can do, okay? So we got that today. And then we also got our desk review for last year. And hands down, we did a great job. So we met that. So yeah, I expect that we're going to get some more certificates for this year coming up. So do you have questions?
Thank you very much. Do members have questions or comments? Member Matt?
Yeah, so thank you for presenting this because this really just touched my heart, and just the passion that you have and just the empathy that you have. It really is really appreciated.
Thank you.
My question is around the mental and emotional challenges that I'm sure many of the adult students are experiencing. And I know that firsthand, just having to do individual counseling, there's a lot of barriers, obviously, right? If they did not have a good experience academically throughout elementary or high school, overcoming just that mindset of failure or just believing in themselves. So how do you and your team support the students that do come? We know that there's that level of expectation that they have to go through the program and to do well, but there's also that mental and emotional piece that we all know is real and is there. How do you support the students when they are experiencing that?
I'm so glad you asked that question. First of all, one of the trainings that we just recently went through was mental health. We've done the first aid training, but the next training was mental health training. You know, what are the things to look for? What can we do to assist the student? And I think the one thing in adult education, and how I always approach students when they first come in or when I greet them, the beauty of adult education is I'm an adult too. We're here to learn together. You know things that I don't know. So we approach it from that point of view. We're here to learn together. It's not I'm here and you're here. We're equals. And so that begins at a different point with the adult to appreciate what you bring to the table, what I bring to the table. So we start from that point. We also don't use grades, so that we stop that at the very beginning. We talk about what you need to know and be able to do to move to the next step, to move to the next step. That's all we do. That erases that whole, mentality that, I failed something. No, you didn't fail anything. This is what you know. This is what we're going to work on next. They have complete ownership for their learning plan. They do their own goal setting. So they have ownership for that. And I think that alleviates some of that. Sometimes our students stop out. I don't call it dropout. They stop out. They have lots of responsibilities. They have children, they have medical issues, they have work multiple shifts on jobs, they have things like that. So when they return, after stopping out, we're always happy to see them. There's never any shame that, where have you been? No, hey, we're happy to see you, come on in, right? Or we get in touch with them, we text, hey, you know, you're gonna come back and see us because we sure do miss seeing you. Things like that, I think, make it more comfortable for people.
Thank you for that and the work that you do. If they have experienced a stop out, as you titled it, do they pick back up where they left off, or do they have to start over in the process? What does that I guess process look like when they do return?
One of the things, you know, of course, we have guidelines that we have to follow that, you know, the state and feds set for us. But one of the things is that their assessment is good for 180 days. So nothing has to change, and they don't have to do anything different but walk back in the door unless 180 days have passed. If 180 days have passed, then we have to update things. But we try to make it as painless as possible. Hey, let's get a new update on what's going on with you in math. Doesn't mean we have to do everything all over again. So we try to work with it that way. And we don't call it testing. We try to just look at it as an update, or, you know, let's see what's going on with you with math or reading or something like that. Try to keep it painless.
Okay, thank
for our
you.
students.
And then my last question is, I know that we are anticipating, or we have had conversation with the John Community High School. Have we had discussion with them yet? Okay. Well, so there's anticipation. Go ahead.
They canceled. It was supposed to be Monday. They canceled. I can give you an update during exec if you like.
Okay, okay. So still with that line of thinking, it's a possibility or anticipation around several Don students possibly enrolling into CPS that would either need the adult education or the credit recovery process. Would they begin, I'm imagining that they would begin kind of at ground zero with the program, depending on what pathway they select, right? It wouldn't be, I was taking credit recovery here with my credits that I've earned here transfer over. Like, can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. First of all, we've had quite a few Dawn students who have come to our program who just need to make a change, okay? And some of them, because Dawn does not offer HSC, we do, so that is a pathway for you. Dawn does not offer ADP, we do, so that might be an option for you. Credit recovery is a 2-year program. And so if they were going to Dawn and they have already gone through the 2 years and did not complete with Dawn for whatever reason, that 2 years is set by the state and we can't override that. But if they're in that 2-year cycle, we can pick up from where they were. We don't have to start over. We can find those credits, find out what they did. Did they do an end of course? Typically what we're seeing is they did not do an end of course if they needed it. We can pick that up and we can start from that point. We can transition them right into our program and work with them from there. So if they come to us, then we will find a pathway for them to complete. They will not be turned away. We will find a pathway.
Thank you. That's all the questions that I have.
Any
Member
other
Moffett?
questions?
So I just, I'm a little tired, so my energy is waning, so forgive me. Not because I'm not excited. You mentioned that you are only $1,000 per student. And that is music to my ears when we look at other numbers that are like $12,000 and $14,000 a student. Is there, I guess I'm wondering about how could we support you other than, because I don't think the marketing is very robust for you all. Could you handle more students? Like if we were to get you 500 more students, is that a good thing from where you all are placed or bad things? Because I'm thinking like, hey, that's more money. That would be maybe more resources, but would an increase in your enrollment be a good thing? I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Let me
I'm
just
sorry.
say this. I've been with Cincinnati Public for more than a year or two, for quite some time. And what I've always tried to pride myself on is never to burden the district with any financial obligation, because I know that the district has, for K-12, their own financial challenges. And so I am very grateful for things like the building that we occupy, for the custodial, for the plant operator, for all the services that we get because we are part of this school district. So I just make it work with whatever the state provides us. And be that right or wrong, and if there's another administrator down the road who wants to do that differently than I do, then fine. But that's just always I love this school district, and I love what K-12 does. And so I've just always been very cautious with how we spend the grant and not to ever overstep. And so I don't turn people away. We have a waiting list right now for ESOL. We are now at almost 50-50 of our Aspire program and our ESOL program, because we've received a lot of students from Somalia and Mauritania who come to us who barely speak English. So we do have a waiting list right now till February for those students. But I don't know if I really answered your question. I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm just trying to say we have the grant for Aspire, and then for 22 plus and for 18 credit recovery, it used to be 22 plus. For credit recovery and for ADP, we draw down different funds. It's not a lot of money, but we draw down different funds from that, from ODEW. And
Just come
I'm
a little-
sorry.
There you go.
From
I got you.
ODEW.
No, you're fine.
I'm such a teacher, I just want to walk around.
I got you.
So,
No,
We're
you answered my question fine.
so we're okay.
To Superintendent Murphy, does this have like a separate IRN? Is this a separate program? I'm just wondering how it's set up. No trick. I'm just wondering.
So it is a separate program. It's not a school.
Okay.
Do you know where they're located? Okay.
She's been there.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Yeah,
Well,
you
remember
just said
Weinberger that
that.
way.
You did say that. So yes, it's a program. It's not a school.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I got you. I have other questions, but this is just for the
But
superintendent.
I
but
really
that's okay.
wanted you to hear from Robbie, because I just don't think people, even within our own district, know all of the things she provides the community. And I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
But thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Crossett, and then we'll go to the Vice President.
Yep. Thank you. It's impressive what you're doing. It's great.
Thank you.
And I did want to follow up on Dr. Moffat's question. Forget about funding sources. Is there a need for you to provide services to more people? Forget about where the money comes from, but you said you had a waiting list. I mean, it seems like you could do a lot more, right?
There's always a need to provide more services for especially our ESOL population right now. With the climate being what it is in our country, I'm not sure what that will look like 6 months from now. I don't know. Right now, we're really busy recruiting a lot of volunteers to help us. I didn't even talk about volunteers. We're recruiting a lot of volunteers to assist us with our ESOL students, and so that's helpful. The other thing that could be helpful, we offer scholarships to our students that want to go on to post-secondary once they graduate. That's something that we do. Ms. Bolton's at our graduation, so she knows we do that, so that's helpful.
Great, thank you.
Robbie, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming tonight. And as I'm sitting here thinking, Superintendent, as we have discussed just marketing and communicating. We need to really get this program out there, whether it's highlighting, taking a month and highlighting the things, the great things that CPS is doing. So I just want everyone in this room to give you a big round of applause and thank you so much for everything that you do.
And that's for my staff. That's for my staff.
And the staff, everyone involved. It is an amazing program and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. These have been wonderful presentations.
They're
Very
almost like tearjerkers.
Wonderful presentations.
Yes.
Is she about to cry over there?
It's her, it's the vice president's touch.
Oh, wow.
At any rate, we will move on, but I do think one thing to add, if I could, this idea people don't know about Aspire, or they may not know about the internships, or they may not know about the apprenticeships, or what have you. It is the issue of the right vocabulary that has been mentioned to me yesterday about workforce. And I think the taxpayers in the district need to be fully aware of the workforce piece that we offer. And it's another area where we don't market it properly and well enough, and we have a long history of it. And I do think that, calling something a junior co-opt program with the city, or packaging all of that together in a bigger bucket, I think there's so many wonderful things that are fragmented, the separate this and separate that and separate everything we're doing. I think it's just like teaching. You want to put things together. It's not chunking it. It's the opposite of chunking it. You want to combine things together so people get the message. And I look forward to us being able to do that. If something as particular as was mentioned, having a different school day so that our young people can go to work during the school day. That's a very simple thing that we could try to think about. So this has been great today. Appreciate it, the questions and the conversations that have taken place. Members, we have a proposed consent agenda that's been distributed and posted. And I would ask if anybody has any exceptions to the consent agenda. It's a short one this time. Yes.
Yes, so I would like to abstain from the treasurer's report, page 9, under donations, line item 2, as well as page 12, general counsel, line item 3. 3, so the third one. Thank you.
Okay, hearing the exception, the treasurer making a note of the exception for the consent agenda. Does anybody else have any other abstentions or exceptions to make for the consent agenda? The consent agenda is, as you can see, it's acceptance of committee reports, the superintendent's recommendations, treasurer's report. And I will now take a motion to accept the. Thank you, Vice President. So moved. And I have a second for the acceptance.
Second.
Thank you very much. And any discussion about the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote.
Mr. Crossett?
Yes.
Ms. Mapp?
Yes, with the noted abstentions.
Dr. Moffett?
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg?
Yes.
President Bolton?
Yes, thank you all very much. What we'll do next, if we can do that, we have just two things to make mention of in the board matters and the updates and inquiries. Want to remind the board that the organizational structure forms have been sent out. I think nearly everyone has responded. If you have not responded, please respond to Ms. Davis, actually today, unless we can get that, today would be the best, so that we can proceed. The other real quick one is a reminder that the meeting date change to January 6th, the tax budget, as well as the organizational meeting, and as well as the business meeting will be held on January 6th. Does anyone have any assignments besides, I think, the one that's going back to policy committee about the upper top of that policy? not not what we just added, but,
So looking at the previous
yes.
part of the policy that we had already voted upon.
Will Policy Committee accept that assignment?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other assignments from board members? Hearing none, we're going to take a motion to adjourn into executive session for the purpose, I believe, of property and employment of public official, if I recall correctly. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that's correct. We're going to do that fast. It actually is going to be a short executive session, believe it or not. We're pretty well meetinged out, and appreciate all the work. Thank you all very much. Treasurer?
You need your motion on your seconder?
Yeah. Who is it?
Second.
Thanks, Moffett and Weinberg, thank you.
And I have a question, Board President Bolton.
Discussion?
So after the exec session, do you have to state that we're going to be leaving after that? We're not going to come back in here?
I'm going to do that if this motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone will be happy. We are not returning. 4 meetings is enough. Okay. Hit it.
Mr. Crossett?
Thank God.
Ms. Mapp?
Yes.
Dr. Moffett?
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg?
Yes.
President Bolton?
Yes, we are adjourned into executive session. We will not be returning to public session. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great holiday if we don't